Some people know what they want to do as a career from a very young age. Others choose a career based on their parents' wishes. And some never find the career they're interested in and just settle for whatever pays the bills. My guest this week, Emile Ghessen, chose a very niche career to follow after a choice encounter with another former service member on a night out. Today we talk about how he got into the world of documentary filmmaking, the various wars he's covered, having his work nominated for an Oscar, and how the algorithms on social media platforms can influence a person's opinions and beliefs without them even knowing.
Welcome to the Stand Easy podcast, sharing the stories of the men and women of the armed forces, past and present, who have achieved greatness. Your host is Crash Stevenson.
Emile, thanks for joining me.
No worries.
Mate, this was meant to happen in 2019 when I first thought about doing this, but life sort of got in the way, so I'm grateful for you coming on and giving me that time.
No worries, man.
So, firstly, ex-Royal Marine or former Royal Marine, turned filmmaker. Now, most lads, when they get outside, have a normal job, but what inspired you to go down? That is a very, very unique sort of job to go into when leaving the military. What inspired you to go and do that?
Well, I left the Corps in 2012 after doing 12 years, bang on to the day. Left as a sergeant, and then I'd done everything. I'd done 3 tours of Afghanistan, the invasion of Iraq. I was content in what I'd done in the Corps, and being a senior, I could see a lot of men, because the 12-year mark for a lot of people who don't know this, who are in the military, is your half pension. So normally, if you go over the 12 years, people stay for the full 22. So if that commitment at a 12-year point, you've got another 10 years. And I love the Corps, I love the military, I love the country. But I was content in everything I'd done, and I knew Afghanistan was coming to an end. I felt that the political situation, that no government would have the appetite to deploy the military in a way we had been deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan. Not that I'm saying I supported them wars, especially not now in hindsight. But I just knew there'd be a lot of sitting around and a lot of pointless exercise. So I took the decision to leave. Naturally, like most men, when you first leave, you move into the security sector. I was doing CP work, close protection work, and maritime work. And as they say, and I say to people, there's no security in security. So guys leave and you go in there, you've got a contract, you're earning good money. Then all of a sudden that rug gets pulled from under you, that job's gone. You're like, well, I was expecting to earn £6,000 this month. Now I'm not going to earn anything. What am I going to do? It's a lot of stress and a lot of uncertainty in the security world. I'm half Arabic. My father's from Syria, a Christian Arab. And obviously ISIS were running around the Middle East, cutting people's heads off, burning them in cages and stuff. And my family were trapped in Syria, in Damascus. And I was just like interested in what was going on. And then I live in Devon, and I was on a night out and I met a sailor who was going to fight ISIS as a volunteer. He was going to join the Peshmerga, then the YPG in Syria. And I was like asking him questions. He didn't really know much about it, what was going on out in the Middle East. That's my dog behind me. He was motivated to go out and do it. And I just couldn't understand. I had family in Syria. I had the skills as a former Royal Marine who had just left 18 months before. And I was like, why do I not want to go fight with militia, but this random sailor does? So I met him, spoke to him. I then sent an email randomly to TV companies. Said, I've got this great idea. I'm a former commando. My family are in the Middle East, and I've met these guys, this group of Brits, American, Australians that are going out to fight ISIS. I want to do a documentary on it. I didn't have a clue anything about films, didn't know how to make a documentary. So very quickly, a TV company picked it up. They were in talks with Channel 4 to do a documentary. And then we started filming in the UK. And then a few days before we were supposed to fly out to the Middle East, they pulled the plug. They said, one, we're not really sure on what connections we're going to get on the ground, because you're a bit uncertain about where these guys are going and what access we're going to get, the danger, and also insurance. We're not going to continue with this. So in the end, I spoke to someone and he's like, just get a camera and go out yourself. And I was like, I don't know how to make a film. I don't know. What do you mean? I'm old school when it comes to cameras. I mean, in the end, I drove up towards Manchester, bought a camera for about £700 off eBay, and then drove to Heathrow, and then got on a plane, went out to northern Iraq into Syria. And that for 2.5 years, I was making that film. I even went over into Iran, dressed as one of the resistant fighters up in the mountains. So yeah, I was back and forth just filming and just learning on the job on how to do it. I was literally watching documentaries, seeing how they do it, how they filmed angles, storylines, and then coming back. And to be honest, I didn't have much money. I was quite down in the dumps when it came to money. I was borrowing money of my dad to buy microphones after a trip, coming in finding some work, and I was doing a lot of surveillance work at that time, private investigation work, to earn money to then go back out and continue filming. And that was my first feature documentary I've done. So I do features which are around the 90-minute mark, and I've made 3 features. So that's really how I got into it. It was just a guy in a pub who inspired me to like tell his story.
That's mental. And so your first documentary, correct me if I'm wrong, that was Robin Hood Complex.
Yeah, that was Robin Hood Complex, the fight against I've forgotten it so long ago now. The fight against Islamic State. That was the first one.
I don't know if this is a bit of a personal question, but do you make money off of that? If you've done everything yourself, how would you make money off of producing that?
So yeah, that was another thing, is obviously I paid for everything for the documentary. I then set up a GoFundMe for people then who wanted to support, who are following me. I raised a bit of money from that. But really, you only earn money from documentaries if you sell them at the end, if you're able to sell it. What we done, we managed to get it onto Amazon, so people then were paying for downloads of it. But the worst thing is when your friends go, "Oh, can I watch it for free?" I was like, "You're my mate. You should be paying for it to support what I'm doing."
Yeah.
This is, and like I was even having a conversation yesterday with a friend, an ex-Marine, over coffee, and we're talking about mates rates. So I'm trying to get my bathroom done, and I was like, "I don't want mates rates. I want to pay you what it costs, because you're trying to earn a living. I want to support you and your work." So yeah, that's how you earn money from the films. Then I've done the second documentary. I've done one on Ukraine. So the first 2 films were about volunteer fighters and what motivates them, humanization. And then my last film I've done, which was the biggest I've done, was called 45 Days to Fight for a Nation. It was between the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And we managed to raise $150,000 to make that film. And then we've done a massive tour of the USA, Canada, UK, and Australia. And that was even entered into the Oscars. But unfortunately, we weren't nominated and picked up in the last 15, but we're in the running for the Oscars. And we were the only independent film that was out there running it. And we've done a massive premiere. We've done 2 of them, actually, and we sold out in 36 hours. We actually sold out quicker than some Hollywood films at the Chinese Theatre on Hollywood Boulevard, which was a massive achievement for me, with thousands of people watching the film. So yeah, the film industry, journalism is a tough gig. I've got so many friends who are journalists or filmmakers who are giving it up because they just can't afford to do it. It's more of a hobby than a profession for a lot of people.
So how, and again, this is probably a bit of a personal question, but it's I guess it isn't. For you to, is there a set amount you would need each month to support yourself out there in terms of, for example, when you're out in Ukraine and you're paying for food and that out there, is there a set amount that you sort of budget? So when you do your GoFundMe, you're like, right, once I get to this amount, that's it, I'm green light, I'm good to go.
Normally, I'm okay for money at the moment. So I've just spent the last year. So after the invasion, so we just finished the US, Canada, and the UK part of the tour, and then I was back out in LA, and then the producer I work with, he's from Hollywood, who I worked from the last film, and we're talking about movies, trying to move into the movie industry and stuff. So I was out there, and then obviously the war in Ukraine started, and I was like, and everyone was messaging me, and I've just come back. I'd spent over a year editing the last film and being on tour with it. And everyone was like, "You're going to Ukraine?" I was like, "I've already done a documentary on Ukraine. I can't be bothered." And I flew back to the UK, and it's that classic one. Once again, I just go on the Sky Scanner, look at flights, how can I get back into Ukraine? And then within, when was it? The war started on the 24th. By the 28th, I was back in Ukraine. I spent near enough a year in Ukraine. I'm still currently working in Ukraine, but I'm back in the UK now. We've still got ongoing projects. But over a year enough in Ukraine. And we got to the stage where Kiev was dead. There was no one in Kiev other than journalists and a few hardcore people and soldiers. And we actually found a bar which was open. So one of my mates, he's an ex-bootneck, and he was working for the Times as their security. And I was like, "James, I love food." I was like, "James, mate, I'm hanging out. Do you mean you'd go to the supermarkets that were open, the stores, and it would only be like tin food or Pringles." And I was like, got a slice of cheese, a gherkin, 2 mushrooms, like from a can, and some Pringles. And that's all I'm eating every day. I go, I need to get some food. And he goes, I found a bar, a secret bar that's got a basement where the soldiers are using it as a checkpoint, but the owner's opening it up for journalists to go in. So I went there, gave it the tap. And then from there, all the journalists used this bar in Kiev as our, like, where we can get 1 hot meal a day, and they were serving alcohol. And even though there was a military checkpoint outside, and there was a ban on alcohol, they allowed the journalists. And one of my friends is a well-known journalist, and he's like, "What's your plan?" Because the Russians are surrounded Kiev, and the bombers were coming in. He's like, "What's your plan if the Russians enter?" I was like, "Just find a basement. I've got a bottle of whiskey I bought from the bar here. Keep it in my rucksack. I'll just go firm and wait for the Russians, and then play it by ear, and just go out and film what we can." And luckily, the Russians didn't make it into the center of Kiev because they were pushed back. But yeah, Ukraine, the war that's currently going on in Ukraine is different to anything I've seen before. I've served in Iraq, Afghanistan. I've been in Syria, Iraq, Ukraine previously, Nagorno-Karabakh with the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and now Ukraine this time. This is a war on steroids that we're seeing now. It's like no other war that anyone in the last 50 years has seen.
Is there a good end state for this, do you think?
I don't think there's a good end state for any war. I think all you got to do is look at our invasion of Iraq, how that ended. All wars come to an end, of course, but the war in Ukraine started in 2014, really, and it's been ongoing, sizzling in the east, and then a full-blown invasion. Who's going to win it? I get this question all the time, who's going to win the war? And there is no winner of war. It's simple as we're not talking about the Allies fighting the Nazis and obviously getting rid of a whole thing. We're never going to get rid of Russia. We're never going to get rid of Putin as such, the way through war. But the Ukrainians, they don't hate Russians. They hate the Kremlin. They hate Putin. What is the outcome of the war? For Putin, really, he wants to hold on to Crimea, which he took in 2014. He wants to have troops in the Donbass region. That's under threat at the moment, really, because Ukraine is doing a lot better than everyone's expected, thanks to NATO and the weapons that we've been providing them. So for Ukraine, victory is liberating all their lands. That's never going to happen because Putin won't allow Crimea and Donbass to go. So really, I don't know how it's going to be. It's a war of attrition, and it's going to get to a stage where Russia's going to be forced into negotiating. At the moment, that no one's negotiating. The Ukrainians don't want to negotiate. And you speak to any Ukrainian, you go, "Are you prepared to negotiate?" They're like, "No, we're fighting for our lands." And and like they say, it's like, how much? If you ever ask that question to any Ukrainian, they will say, "How much of the United Kingdom are you prepared to give away for peace?" And it's like, none. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, well, there you go. Then I'm going to continue fighting. So we're coming into the spring offensive. The Ukrainians are on the move slightly. The Russians might do their own offensive to push more. But yeah, we're coming into that season now where the fighting is going to pick up again. So time will tell if Ukrainians can be successful with their offensive. But the Russians have been digging in and preparing for 6 months now over the winter.
There's a couple of things that I watch Bunker 530 quite a lot.
Oh yeah, I know the guy as well. Yeah.
Josh, you appeared on it actually.
Yeah. They were supporting my work a long time ago. Them guys are good guys.
Absolutely brilliant channel. And that'll in fact, I'll ask that question first. So when you appeared on it, it was because you guys you're with some other journalists, weren't you? And you got some incoming, and just like that.
You talk about Ukraine, yeah. They've supported my work since the first documentary. They're good guys and everything. They love action footage. I prefer humanization storytelling because for me, action, do you know what I mean? Being in the Corps, I've had enough action. Do you know what I mean? I've been in enough firefights. Yeah. To me, I want to tell human stories. But yeah, that incident there, we're just north of Kiev in Irpin. You people who are familiar with Ukraine would have seen the bridge that was destroyed with thousands of people underneath hiding. And then when the bombing stopped, they would run for their lives. We were up there. Got to the checkpoint, a soldier was like, "You can't go any further, it's too dangerous." And I was like, "Okay, cool." Winking at my guy, the driver, to say, "Just keep driving up this road, we'll park up and we'll go on foot." He goes, "Oh no, he said we can't go." I was like, "Okay, cool. The soldier then turned his back, and I was like, just pushed his foot down on the accelerator and we just drove. I was like, "Just keep going, just keep dreaming. It's war. No one gives a fuck, just go." So we got up there, we parked the car up, we moved up. And all the civilians were coming out, rushing as quick as they can. And they're under fire. Do you know what I mean? There's rounds coming in. The Russians were flanking rounds. And Ukrainians bravely in vehicles and buses were just getting people as quickly as they can in vehicles and then shooting them down the road 3 miles to like an ERV safe place where the medics were and everything. And so I pushed up with some journalists and the situation was bad. The atmospherics weren't good. I could tell the atmospherics weren't good. You could hear artillery and mortars coming in quite close. And I was like, went firm. And then there was another group of journalists from Reuters. And you could tell the security guys, I do my own stuff, right? So I don't have security, but big news outlets have security. I had 2 Hungarian guys with me, and I saw their security guy. I go, "You all right, mate?" He's like, "Yeah, sounds." He's like, "You're British." I go, "Yeah." You always have that rapport with them because they know the ex-military guys. And I was like, "You their security?" He goes, "Yeah, Reuters security." He's like, "UX forces?" I go, "Yeah, Royal Marine." He goes, "Whatever army regiment it was." I was like, "Okay." He goes, "My guys want to push up another 400 meters up that road." I was like, "Mate, it's dodgy up there. Do you know what I mean? We don't know where the Russians are flanking." And before we know it, his journalist just said to him, "We're going no matter what." And as a security, he's advising them, but they're going anyway. So they ran across the road down this little dirt track towards this burning house. And the 2 guys I was with, Hungarian, sorry, I was like, "It's too dodgy. We don't need to go over there." They go, "Yeah, but they might get a good story." And it's that thing that you're in the moment, you're like, is it worth it? Is it not worth it? If I was on my own, I'd have gone, "No, moving back." But they're like, come on. I was like, "Fuck it, let's just go." So we ran across the road. We then... all these idiots, and we're talking about 6 journalists or so now in a burning house to go in the burning house to film it. I just stay outside. I was like, if that house goes up, there could be gas canisters in there. There could be anything. Yeah. I'm staying out here. And then all of a sudden, mate, you heard the rounds coming in over to our right. So you hear the boom. And then all of a sudden, exactly in our location, about 40 meters, a round comes straight in. All the journalists, I was like, hit the deck and they're just lying there. So the round's gone in, they're just lying there. I'm listening. There's nothing, you can't hear anything else in the air. So I'm like, just get up, move. And I was like, take cover. If you hear the whistle coming in, just take cover. As I was running, I was trying to find gates that were open to get into a building. Yeah. And rather than just stay out in the open where we were. And just luckily, from my shouting at them, going into bootnet mode, we managed to get to safety. We're back to the forward line of the Ukrainians. We helped some civilians out back to our car and we just like, right, we're getting out of here. It's just too hot. And there was loads of journalists turning up there as we're driving back. Journalists go, "What it's like?" And I'm like, "Don't go. It's too hot." And they're like, "Oh, we're going to keep going." And that's how so many journalists in Ukraine have been killed, because they're taking stupid risks. They don't understand that direct fire, if it's coming from shooting, you can deal with it. You can take cover, you can move. But it comes from indirect fire, it literally lands anywhere. So you could be as professional and as skilled and experienced, but when the mortars, artillery, or S-300s come in, if you're in that line of sight, you're getting whacked, and it's not really worth it just to get a good photo or bit of footage.
So, what was sort of things that you were seeing out there that the mainstream media wasn't showing back in the UK?
People slate the mainstream media up, and I'm very cool about the mainstream media. With the war in Syria, very much the mainstream media didn't tell the truth on what was going on. And the reason they didn't tell the truth is because their editors had a narrative, and that narrative was anti-Assad, anti-Russia. And they weren't on the ground because Assad wouldn't allow them to work on the ground. So they were reporting from places like Turkey or Lebanon about what's going on. The people they were talking to were all anti-Assad. So all the stories and the narrative and the rhetoric was always going to be anti-Assad. No one would ever tell the story that was going to be pro-Assad, or there's a chemical attack. It's got to be Assad or the Russians. There was no counter narrative to it. And they very much went down that route very easily and shamelessly. And I call people out for it all the time. Any journalist that actually said, "Hold on a second, Eastern Ghouta, that chemical attack, where's the evidence to state that the Syrians have done it?" You were like an enemy. You were a bad guy, and people would call you out and go, "You're fake news, fake news." And there was very much a lot of bullying going on from journalists and people, anyone who just questioned the narrative. However, when it comes to Ukraine, what I've seen is because journalists are working on the ground, they're talking to real people active there, they are reporting more of the facts that's going on. Of course, they're telling a story from one side because they're all on the Ukraine side. So we're only seeing half the story as such. But You don't need to be. I didn't need to be with ISIS to see the atrocities ISIS were carrying out when I was filming there. You can see the aftermath. You can speak the first-hand accounts and primary sources rather than secondary sources. So when it comes to Ukraine, I wouldn't say a lot of people and a lot of Russians, of course, say the narrative's sort of fake about Nazis and this and everything else. It's just not the case at all. Is very much Russia is very experts in propaganda. They've been doing this for years. Well, we're experts, the Brits as well, of course, and the Americans. But the Russians are relentless at their propaganda and their narratives. And you would find in this day and age of social media where every idiot's got a platform. Before, the nutters were sitting in their mum's basement shouting at the walls. Now they can just go online and they can spread their bullshit for everyone and conspiracy theories. I'm not saying all conspiracy theories are wrong, but you need facts to back it up.
Yeah.
And then they go, well, prove to me that is untrue. I go, I don't need to prove a negative. You're the one who's making this claim. You need to prove that's happened. I don't need to disprove your lies. So yeah, when it comes to all wars, there's a lot of propaganda. And in Ukraine, of course, there's propaganda from both sides. That's part of war. Was there propaganda in Iraq? 100%. Afghanistan. Every conflict, you'll find propaganda. And now that we've had the internet, we have information at our fingertips. For a lot of people, it's harder to know what's true and what's not. What I would say about the narrative that's coming out of Kiev for Ukrainian side, that majority of it is accurate on what's going on because people are physically there and seeing it.
Yeah. So the sorry. Oh, tickly throat. With the propaganda with Russia, so I've done the military psyops course, and I found it so interesting that what a lot of people don't realize is that psyops isn't you're either doing it or you're not. There's 3 different levels to it. So you've got white, grey, and black. And if my memory serves me right, so this was probably about 5 years ago I did the course now. White is where you can attribute what you're posting on social media, say. You can attribute that to a source, to a specific source.
Yeah.
Grey is where it's true, but you can't quite attribute it to a source. And black is just straight out bullshit.
Straight lie. Yeah.
And unless it's changed, I think the British government anyway only does white and dabbles in grey. Whereas our adversaries, like Russia, just straight out black, bullshit all the way. They don't care if they get caught out or not. But what I will say is that their counter psyops is just as strong in terms of picking up misinformation of their adversaries and turning it around. So there was a case study that I read, and there was a picture put up, I think it was by the BBC, and I forget what op it was, but there was a bunch of guys in rig going up to a C-17 about to fly out and go and do whatnot. And they were all really refreshed and all the rest of it. And then there was another picture where I think one of the cabin crew was like, this place is a shithole. Or it was them getting off at wherever it was. And cabin crew was like, this place is a shithole. Get back up there and tidy it. And you can tell from their demeanor that they're like, oh, fuck's sake. Like just traipsing themselves back up there. That picture was the one that was put on the BBC originally. Russia took it away. The powers that be in the UK went, BBC, take that down and put something up that shows them in a good light, which was the one with the like really strapping young lads marking them up. Russia's gone and posted the one where they look absolutely threaders, and the tagline was something like, oh, UK troops demoralised that having to go and do this, this, and this. And that was just a small, simple mistake of the wrong picture put up, but they've just created this whole other narrative around it, and it's just phenomenal. The misinformation that can push
after
out.
In between making my first documentary and making my second one, I went to film school, and it was with BFBS. I got a scholarship from the British Legion, who paid us to do the course so we could survive doing the course for a year. So we're up at BFBS, who does the forces and news and stuff, and we're doing training for a year, and it was a brilliant course. And they were posting, obviously we weren't working for them, we were studying there and getting experience. And they posted, this was what, 2017, 16, 17? And they posted a video about army lads in Estonia. And they were filming, the camera crew out there filming them, and guys are wearing woolly hats, and they're like looking at the body language, like, yeah, they're in Estonia for the Russian threat. That's what they're there. So that's what the story is. And they're talking to them, and they like talk about how cold it is, and it's like, oh yeah, it's really cold. And So I spoke to someone at BFPS and I said to them, I go, this kind of footage that is the image, it's PR. Do you mean the narrative from the UK government is that these men are going out to Estonia to protect the flank from the Russians? Yeah. Now, all of a sudden, you're putting a video out there of them saying how cold they are. Is the Russians going to use that and go, hold on a second, look at these Tom, Dick, and Harrys? They're cold, okay? To counter if we roll over in our tanks, but they're cold. It is all about imaging. Like I say, I do film work as a director and a cameraman. Is even eye levels. Is that if I'm filming someone and I'm trying to manipulate the audience, well, not manipulate as such, but I'm trying to influence the audience on who I'm filming with. For example, I imagine what you say, you're talking about something I don't agree with the narrative. Just say you're pro-Russian, for example, about the war's good. All I would do is a little trick is I'll put the camera higher, looking down at you. So it's above your eye line, looking down. So it's to give that audience looking down on what you're saying. If I respect what you're saying, I'll get the camera looking up at you. So the audience are looking up at you. It's like, oh, he's got something important. It's little tricks like this. And when it comes to media, that's very important. Is, for example, even in the news, like you were saying about news stories, even a picture of Putin, for example, they're trying to tell a story. They'll do a picture of him looking angry, looking nasty. And they've done it very much with Saddam in the lead up to the invasion in 2003. All the pictures of him screaming, when you see of his mouth and his finger like this, to give that impression to people that he's a horrible guy. And it's all subliminal messaging that people are getting. But like you said about black psyops, when it comes to the Russians are not scared of just telling a lie constantly over and over and over again. And is that we're at this stage now where how many times have someone told you something and you know it's blatantly fake news, but because you've heard it so many times, you actually start questioning, is it true, is it not? In fact, I don't even know if it's true or not. I don't care anymore. It's just out there. You think about Trump and Hillary Clinton on their the
presidential run.
It's like Hillary the crook. He didn't have to back that up with any evidence as such. He could throw a few snippets about this, that, and everything else. But it's catchy and it gets people thinking, is she untrustworthy? When it comes to Ukraine and the Nazi narrative, is Western media to blame for that, actually? Because after 2014, up to 2022, the war there, and I worked in Ukraine for many years, back and forth and stuff. And I even went with National Geographic. They were making a documentary on far-right individuals in America and how some of them went to Ukraine. And they were like, Emile, because I know a lot of weird people, and they're like, do you know any Nazis? I go, in what country? There's Nazis in every country. I know Nazis everywhere. They go, in Ukraine. I go, yeah, there's a few far-right guys I know who are a bit on the spectrum on their opinions. And even when we went out there, they were like, we could find more Nazis and far-right in Chicago than we could find here in Ukraine. But the story still talks about far right in Ukraine, because there is far right there. There is far right in every country. So the media were telling lots of stories about Nazis and far right in Ukraine because they were easy stories to tell. Very easy to find someone who was outspoken in Ukraine to talk about. So that narrative had been built up for many years that Ukrainians were all Nazis. And then now we see Putin at the beginning of the war. Well, really, for the first 8 months, they tried this heavily about Nazism, it's slowly dying off now because people are a bit bored of hearing that now. But you've got to remember, the Russians, they were very fundamental in defeating Hitler. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't for the Soviet Union, we probably wouldn't have won the Second World War. So May the 9th, which has just gone now, is their victory day for the Great War. And they called the Second World War the Great War. So really, for people in the Soviet Union bloc areas, countries who are now not a part of the Soviet Union as such, fighting Nazis means something to them. It's a big deal. So when Russia are using that narrative about liberating Ukraine of Nazis, it means something to people. People go, we fought the Nazis. My grandparents fought the Nazis, and there's Nazis there now. You're doing good work. We support this war. Fight them bad people that tried to invade us before. So once again, it's controlling that narrative.
It's phenomenal, isn't it? Eventually, wars are going to be won just on information and spread of misinformation, I think.
They are.
Before it gets to even boots on the ground.
But it's the world that we live in now, it's not just wars, it's countries and leaders on governments. You think about even if you tell, we've got maybe going a bit off topic here, but even talking about like the Brexit campaign, or like I was saying, the Trump campaign and stuff like this, is companies like Cambridge Analytica, who were think tanks or influence companies and how they influence through social media and influencing people's their perception of things. It's dangerous, really. You can overthrow governments through the media. And this is the problem. And look, I'm part of the media and I work in that. Obviously more for own like self-employed rather than actually working for a mainstream with a narrative. But media can make and break governments and leaders. You think about Boris Johnson with Partygate.
Yeah.
If papers weren't running it and news stories weren't always going on about it, would we really care that he was in a room and there was a cake and someone was having a drink, or he was in his garden? But the fact is that the newspapers were running stories daily. People start getting a bit pissed off because they're seeing it. It's in their face constantly. So really, when you think about people like Murdoch who run big news outlets and different outlets that under different names, but they all come under the same company as such, they have a lot of power and a lot of influence to change people's perceptions, to actually get rid of governments and get rid of people. So really, it's dangerous when you think about it, how much power that people have out there who have an influence. Look at Andrew Tate, for example. I'm not saying Andrew Tate's dangerous. Obviously, there's a lot of people who are scared of him, and he's getting shadow banned. He's banned from a lot of platforms. He's been in prison and such and that. Is people I don't know the ins and outs of the case and what happened there, but because people are telling us stuff about him kidnapping a girl and all this stuff, is all you got to do is sow a seed in someone's mind, and automatically you're guilty. For example, to look at Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew's never been convicted of anything. He's got some unfavorable friends as such, but he's never been convicted of anything, but he will never come back from what happened because people have formed an opinion from what they've been told and what they've heard. I was saying to my friend the other day that the absence of facts doesn't make you innocent.
Yeah.
All you've got to do is make a name. I've done some filming actually before with the paedophile hunters. So they're a group of online people. What they do is they set up profiles of children online. They're adults, and they just sit there and they wait for sexual predators to start messaging them. Then they start engaging, they screenshot things, and then they make a document. And what they do is they plan a meet. So they meet.
This is like the modern equivalent of To Catch a Predator with Chris Hansen.
You can find them everywhere on the internet. So I went out with them, filming them doing this. Like we were going to try and make a documentary, but we never got it off the ground in the end. And you're meeting these guys that they're capturing, and everyone that I went out with was 100% was guilty. Do you mean I've seen the evidence? I've seen pictures of their dicks that have been sending and the messages they've been sending children who they thought was children. And the police would come, they'll hand them over to the police and stuff. And it was eye-opening. And I even said to them, I go, have you ever got it wrong? And they were like, yeah, we have got it wrong before. We've accused someone being of a paedophile that wasn't a paedophile. And it's, imagine now you're in your town and you get called a paedophile.
Yeah.
That never goes. That accusation, you can never, even if you are totally innocent, once someone accuses you of something, it sticks with you. Because people will be like, remember, there's that pedo down there. Oh, he was never convicted. Yeah, but no smoke without fire.
That's it, isn't it? It's always that, but.
Yeah. And now we're going back to what we're talking about Ukraine with the Nazis, is when you have people in the Western world who've never been to Ukraine, didn't probably even know about Ukraine until the invasion just gone on there, adamant that there's Nazis there, NATO was going to invade Russia and stuff like that, is they're buying into a narrative that is being manipulated to them by the Russians. And that's what they want. But all wars are surrounded by disinformation.
Yeah, the thing is, with social media as well, something I learned at a previous unit, you search something. So we're going back to Andrew Tate. Say you search Andrew Tate arrested for kidnapping a woman. The algorithm in all these social media platforms will then only show you, or they will show you the majority of what you search. They'll start showing you Andrew Tate convicted, or Andrew Tate house arrest, Andrew Tate this, Andrew Tate that. It's all the negative stuff. I think it was Facebook had their pants down in front of Congress for that during the presidential election, and the algorithms that if you are more blue than red or Democrat versus Republican, you're more likely to see Democratic stuff due to the algorithm. Whereas if they're all about fairness, you would have seen 50-50 and all the rest of it. So there's an unconscious bias, but there is a bias built into these algorithms within all social media platforms as well.
100%. And that's something that not everyone's aware of is algorithms. An algorithm, for those who don't really get it, simple as that. If I like pictures of cats, social media thinks I want to see more cats. So they encourage it. However, if I support Labour, they think I want to hear more Labour stories. They start telling me Labour stories and anti-conservative stories, is because that's how the algorithm works. But that algorithm can be exploited. It can be exploited by companies like Cambridge Analytica, for example, who see, okay, what does he like? Okay, he likes David Cameron, for example. He likes David Cameron. Let's now start sending him stories about David Cameron sticking his penis in a pig. And that's what they do is, so really algorithms they're great if you want to see content, if you're interested in cars, you want to see cars, but it's dangerous when it comes to shaping your opinion when it comes to something like political or war as such. So yeah, algorithms are designed not to be doing that, but that's exactly how the robot is taken over. And they are quite dangerous because people then live in echo chambers. You live in an echo chamber and we see it when someone gets so offended when you question them. You question their beliefs and they go, I feel like you're attacking me. Like I spend a lot of time out in the States and that. And like LA is crazy for it. You can't say anything to anyone there without them being offended. It's like, why are you offended? Oh, because you're saying this. No, all I'm doing is questioning what you're saying and telling you what I believe in. Is because even friends even go through Instagram, for example, the people that be popping up were people that they think are on your algorithm that you've got stuff in common. So after a period of time, when you're living in an echo chamber of social media, you're only getting back their opinions of what they think you want to. If you're a Brexiteer, for example, you wanted to leave the EU, they're only going to tell you stories of people that have got similar opinions to you. So when it comes to the opposite of Remainers, people get angry. It's like, how dare you? Because they're not used to it. Because we're not conditioned that we're conditioned into only hearing the opinion that our algorithm thinks that we want to hear.
And this is taking me back to the PSYOPs course that I did. So the purpose of PSYOPs is to change the behavior or the attitude of your target audience. And that is essentially what the media does. When you say that people like Rupert Murdoch, they can control a narrative, they can get rid of governments. Essentially, that's what some government organization, not necessarily in the UK, but call the US, for example, they're like, oh, well, we want to get rid of this leader in this country. We're going to have a PSYOPs campaign. The difference being that to change someone's behavior is very easy to do. You stick a gun to their head. You might not get, their attitude won't change, but to shape someone's attitude can take years and years and years.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Just going back to, when you said that Iraq wasn't a winnable war. Whose book was it I read? Barack Obama's. In fact, no, a lie, it wasn't. It was Paul Sang Chaos. It was Mad Dog Mattis.
Okay, yeah.
So he had a very strong opinion that when Barack Obama said, right, we're going to pull troops out by this date and blah, blah. So they were told to implement, how was it worded? Basically, they were trying to change the way the country was run in the space of however long the Iraq campaign lasted, when prior to that, they had lived like that for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they're trying to change a society in the space of 20 years, and it was just an unwinnable scenario for them, and it was just it clearly didn't work.
And you think when it comes to geopolitics around the world, is the Brits, the Americans, the French, the Russians, the Chinese and such, they all want to have influence around the world. We've been doing it since the empire, and if not before. We want to have influence around the world. We want to have nations that we could work with, and the countries that aren't working with us because they're working with the Russians, for example, or the Chinese, they're going to go against us eventually because the influence on them countries is going to be in there. So what do? We spend millions on influence in these countries. How do we do it? We do it through soft influence. We will say to them, for example, we can help you build schools, or the Americans who have back in the 80s were spreading English, teaching English in all these countries because they thought, if it's an English-speaking country, it's more likely to be loyal to America rather than a French or such. So they try to put influence into these countries, and also they shape campaigns. We've all heard about the Russians meddling with the US campaign. Of course, the Russians have influence in the US elections, just like we have influence in other elections, because you want to have someone in power that's more friendly to you than against you. Of course, that's just common sense. So when people start talking about Russian influence, but a Russian influence could be as little, for example, as just Facebook advertisement or videos that they're getting circulating on Twitter and stuff like that to get people start thinking it's prevalent in every nation. Everyone gets involved in it, and it's dangerous, really, especially now. Like we talk about algorithms, because people can be very quickly influenced.
Yeah. So, what sort of projects are you working on anything at the minute, or do you have anything in the pipeline that you can tell us, or are you keeping it hush hush?
No. So, like I said, so I went back to Ukraine, obviously, to cover the war, and I was thinking about doing another documentary on this war. Because, like I say, most of my projects are self-funded, or we raise money to do the project. Is like the last one on the Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh, the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Not many people went to it because people didn't even know about it happening. No one really cared. They saw it as a faraway land.
I'll be honest, I only knew because you posted it.
Yeah, exactly. It was a 44-day war that people didn't really know about. And so when it went to Ukraine this time, really my main story was to film if the Russians come into Kiev, the falling of a city and a change of a government. That obviously didn't happen. And once it started getting a little bit safer, of course, there was some hardcore journalists that stayed there during like the surrounding of Kiev. But when the Russians were pushed back from Kiev, a lot more media companies came in because their insurance allowed them to come back in and stuff. So companies were doing quick turnarounds on documentaries. I know one company that was guys who were working for Channel 4, they came in for 6 days. They went home 3 weeks later, they've edited it and it's already getting aired. And I can't compete with that.
Yeah.
Like I said, I normally do features. So there are 90 minutes or so is what I like doing. So I decided I'm not going to make a feature film on the war in Ukraine because I've done one before, even though the story is different. So really, I've just been working in Ukraine, just been collecting footage and then distributing footage to people now, because it's an actual easier way of making money, really, having the connections, getting people to do that. So really, that's what I'm doing at the moment. I don't have an ongoing project as such. I was out in Mallorca with my mate who's a film producer and director who's making a movie. So I went out to Mallorca with them to help out on set to work on that for a bit. So I'm slowly trying to move into more the film industry. I want to move into directing actual movies, but that's a massive jump from documentaries to film. Not because it's hard. I without being big-headed and arrogant about it, I would smash being a director in movies, doing movies, just from working with people in the industry, because I think it's the military in you that you get things done. A lot of these people, directors, they pander to the people and they're not physically strong in leading on what they want. They don't realize that I'm the director. It's my story. This is what we're telling. This is a script. I'm open to ideas, but really, you don't want to play game. Don't play game. You're not on the film.
Yeah.
But when it comes to working with high-profile actors, I think a lot of them get a bit intimidated and stuff like that. And I think it's just mutual respect. So I want to move into film, but that comes at a cost with money. You need people to just go, if they're going to invest millions into a film or hundreds of thousands, they're like, why is this guy directing it? So yeah, that's going to take time to build into that. So slowly dipping my toe into that, eventually, hopefully move into that. But yeah, really for projects, because 45 Days to Fight for a Nation, the last documentary was so massive. It was time consuming. It's not quick and easy to do like self-produced documentaries, even though I have like a team that works with me. It's a lot of work. So because I was tired from that and the tour and then spending a year and a half in Ukraine, at the moment more, it's now just consolidating, earning money, getting a bit of money in the pocket. So when I can move on to my next project, I can go off and do it. We were looking at a project in Los Angeles about homeless people, about me sleeping on the street, homeless with them, to get the stories of these people, because there's a massive issue in Los Angeles about homeless. That's on the back burner. We don't know if we ever get it off the ground or not. But yeah, always toying with ideas. People always come to me with ideas for films and documentaries. So it's, yeah, at the moment, I'm just enjoying just taking a bit, just not working on a full project, because they are intense. It's a lot of work that goes into it, and a lot of stress. Obviously about money. Is like, where are we going to sell this? Are we going to get this away? Are we going to, even like I said, with 45 Days, we've done a massive tour of it. We haven't actually sold it to a TV company. So It's even the producers like, yeah, we might have a distribution deal. Oh, that fell through. We had meetings with Netflix. They were interested. Then it fell through. It's always the ups and downs. So that's why this industry is hard for a lot of people. A lot of people, do you mean it's make or break? And I think, especially when I was at film school, because I had already made a documentary. So I was already in the industry to a certain degree when I went to film school, but a lot of other people hadn't been. And they would come up with this idea, like pitching an idea, and then they get critiqued on it. And being a bootneck, a former Royal Marine, you're used to someone critiquing you, saying that's shit. But they won't just in the core. They don't just tell you it's shit. They tell you why it's shit. Because as Royal Marines, you want your mates to learn, or guys that work with you to learn. So bootnecks are very good at telling you why it's shit and being honest.
Yeah.
So like when people at film school were getting critiqued and getting negative feedback, they would take it on board and they would get really down in the dumps. And I'm like to them, you need to throw 99 pieces of shit at a wall for one of them to stick.
Yeah.
You got what I mean? And when it comes to the media industry, and especially documentaries and film, you've got to be prepared to be knocked back. That when you're talking to Netflix and you think, fuck, I'm going to get this on Netflix, do you mean it's the Holy Grail, and then all of a sudden they're like, we've looked at it, we love it, but X, Y, and Z, we're not going to take it. And for a lot of people, they get disheartened by it. You just got to keep going. You just got to keep making projects. You just got to keep throwing stuff out there. Is any great director out there or anyone in any industry has failed loads of times. It's failing and going, that was a failure. I'm going to keep going. You think about Harry Potter, how many times that went to publishers before one of them actually took it. And I think being in the military, you learn from that, being especially being a Royal Marine, is that you are going to fail and people are going to laugh at you. But the beauty about being a Royal Marine is generally men don't laugh at you for failing. For example, a lad wants to go off and do an ML course, a mountain leader course, or go to Hereford or go to Paul Special Forces, and they fail it. They don't come back to unit and guys laugh at them. Lads go, good effort for trying. Yeah. What did you fuck up on? You know what you need to do next time. Go do it again. And I think that's the beauty of being a former Royal Marine, is that you're used to that you are at a level where you think you're better than other people because you've gone through harder training, but you always know there's something above you and that you want to fight for, you want to be better at. But because you're at that level, you really haven't failed many things. But when you do start failing them, you very quickly pick yourself back up again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. When you said after you got back from film in 45 days, how long did the post-editing take until it was finished? Because you said that, you were really tired from doing that and then going straight out to Ukraine. How long was the time period from getting back to finally having it done?
So really, I was living in Armenia for 11 months because I was trying to get a US visa because I'm on the fly, like the list that you can't get in ESTA, because I've been to Syria and Iraq and stuff. So I had to get a visa. COVID was obviously there, so I couldn't get a visa at the US embassy in London because it was closed. Yerevan, it was open, so I was trying to get that. In the end, I had to get residency in Armenia in order to go to the embassy to get a visa. It was just a nightmare. So because we wanted to edit, because most of the team were American, apart from me as a director, obviously, wanted to edit in LA, but I couldn't get to LA to edit. So in the end, we flew an editor and the producer came out here and we into Armenia and we edited in Armenia. So I was pretty much living there. Yeah. So the main edit, what we call a rough cut, where me as a director sits there with the editor, a great guy called AJ. We sat there sat there in our shorts, smoking shisha, editing this documentary, getting takeaways delivered to us, going out in the evening for some drinks and back to the computer. 7 weeks was like sort of rough edit to get the storyline. Because we would edit it, put it together, we'd do little screenings to people. People then come back with their feedback, go, that works, that doesn't work, that emotion there. Obviously, ultimately, I'm the director. It's my say, it's my story, ultimately. But you want to have that feedback from people. You want to hear, because sometimes you get tunnel vision, because I've put so much time into filming that scene. I know the people in there, I know the story and everything. I'm biased to it. Yeah. And then we edit it, and then we try to make it better than what it is from what we've got on video. And then people watch it and they go, it doesn't work. And you're like, what? Because you've invested so much time. But sometimes you need that honest truth from people to go, it doesn't work for X, Y, and Z reason. And then you look at it and you try to re-edit it. Or sometimes you can edit a whole sequence of 3-4 minutes and it goes on the floor. It's cut. You just got Bob, We're not using that. And I've done that so many times as director, sat there and we're like, does it work? This part, this sequence, does it work? No, just get rid of it. You've got to take that tough decisions, get rid of it. We've put so much, we've put 12 hours into this, it's gone, move on. So yeah, it was 7 weeks of rough cut. And then I managed to get a visa just before we started the tour. And then we done a few more days in a studio in LA where we just touched it up, done the color to it. Yeah, but people don't realize how much work goes into what they watch on television. Is all the sounds, all the coloring, the editing of it. Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, fair one. So if you hadn't have gone, so with your goal to sort of move towards Hollywood directing now, if you hadn't have gone down that route, would you have looked at going into mainstream media, or are you always set on being an independent sort of filmmaker or journalist?
If I hadn't met that guy in the pub, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. I wouldn't have got into documentaries straight away. No, I wouldn't. I don't think I would have. So yeah, I don't think I'd have ever gone down the mainstream route because it wouldn't have been a job for me. I don't know what I'd be doing now if I wasn't. To be honest, it's actually a scary thought to think, what would I be doing if I'm not doing what I'm doing now? Would I be doing a job 9 to 5 where I just hate it as such, or would I still be trying to do security work, trying to scratch around? Yeah, it's a tough one. To be honest, I'm lucky. I've earned money from what I do. So I'm in a position where I could be afford the luxury of continuing doing what I do, and not everyone has that luxury. And but what I would say to anyone that wants to do it is, like I say, you've got to be prepared to spend money out of your own pocket to earn money back. I remember saying to my dad when I was doing my first film, and he's a Syrian he's Syrian. He's been in the UK since 75, and he was like, "Why don't you just go find a normal job?" And to say that to a former bootneck is like, "What do you mean a normal job? What do you feel I'm going to go to an office? What? It's crazy." And he was like, "You're struggling. You're borrowing money off me. You haven't got the money. Do you mean you're borrowing from Paul to give to someone else? You're in debt." And I was like, "Yeah, I know all this, but I've started this. I need to keep going." And of course, I'm not saying to people, it's just like playing roulette. You're at the casino and you're losing all your money and you keep betting more, hoping you're going to get your numbers going to come in or your color's going to come in. But luckily for me, a color did come in for me. I managed to get it, and Jimmy, to continue going. And you're only as good as your last success. And even now, like you saying to me, "Oh, what project you're working on now?" I feel guilty that I'm not working on a project because my last one was so successful. But yeah, you have to keep going, and you have to be prepared for the hard times, and it doesn't always come quickly. And I think in this day and age, especially younger generation, like my son, I've got a 16-year-old or 15-year-old son, they want quick success because they see on YouTube, they see on TikTok success and people who are influencers, and he doesn't realize that takes time. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now in Ukraine, for example, if I hadn't gone through all the other projects I've worked on to get them. Do you know what I mean? So you have to put the long slug in there. But then at some stage, if it wasn't going well, you have to call it a day and go, "Okay, cut my losses now because I'm not going to lose my home because of this." Yeah. But yeah, I think if you've got a passion for films or journalism, there's platforms out there you can do it. Even like you with your podcast here. Do you mean you're not mainstream, but you're doing something that you want to do, you enjoy it, and you do it as a hobby until one day, hopefully, you're doing it professionally.
I mean, fingers crossed, because I've now got 4 years left, and then that's me out. And there's a couple of guys who've been in a couple of years longer than me, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to work for ScotRail, or I'm going to do this."
Yeah.
What are you going to do, Crash? And I'm like, haven't got a fucking clue, and it scares me because
but in 4 years' time, would that be year 22?
Yeah.
So at least you're going to get a pension every month. You're going to get a lump sum.
Yeah, there's that.
You could take more risks than the average. Right, for example, you could take more risks than what I did when I left because I'm not getting any money each month. I need to get money in. At least the luxury, so peace of mind that you could take a job that you're more passionate about, that's paying less because you've got top up from your pension. So you're in a great position to start with.
But the whole thing is that I don't know what it is that I want to do. It's bizarre. I looked at becoming a copper. However, so when I was a young lad, I was either going to join the army or become a copper. And then I found out about the Marines, and obviously I joined the Corps. So there's always something has called me back to wanting to join the police. But then I saw an article, or I saw something online and there was a copper that was searching a guy in custody. And he knelt down as he's going down the back of the guy's leg, down towards his ankle. This arsehole farts in the copper's face and goes, "How does that taste?" And I'm like, it would take everything in me not to break that guy's nose. And I just in general, the disrespect that police are shown these days. And now, granted, yeah, there's a very small minority are really bad apples, and they tarnish the reputation of those that are good. But just the disrespect and the long hours, the fact that my wife was poorly the other week, so I had to take her to A&E. She ended up being fine, just being melodramatic. But in the 8 hours that we were there was 4 pairs of coppers were in there at the same time as us for people that I were drunk, had been arrested, had to give blood tests, all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, that is just a waste of absolute resources, and that's not something I want to do. So, and also the danger side of it. You know, when I was a young lad and I was like, yeah, let's go and catch bad guys and all the rest of it. Now I'm a father and I've got kids. I'm like, yeah, I'm not in a hurry to go out and get stabbed by some junkie,
right,
or you know, have somebody take a machete to me because their girlfriend broke up with them, or I'm like, nah.
Well, I love watching like police interceptors and all these like police programs and everything. And like I was saying as you, I was going to join a corps, be a police officer. I think generally a lot of people in the corps are that way minded. It's an authority thing, I think. And like you see them and these little scroats going, "Oh, you're always picking on me, you're harassing me." I'm 41 now. I've never been harassed by the police. And the reason I don't get harassed by the police because I'm not on their radar, because I'm not doing anything stupid to be like harassed. So I've got the same as you. I've got friends who are coppers, and they tell you they're dealing with the same people day in, day out. Yeah, I don't envy being a police officer at all. It's terrible. I think it's a terrible job. Like saying they don't have respect, they're underpaid, long hours. It's of course. I think for some people it's a duty, but I think when you've served in the military, you've done your duty. You don't really need to go off and do it again. And one of my good mates, who's a former Royal Marine, he went and joined the police. He hated it. He left the police and then trained in the fire service, which he loves now. Because he's just like, you're working with people that you don't have the same knowledge and experience that you've had from the military, and you're just dealing with scroats on the street day in, day out.
Yeah. It must be heartbreaking for some people, especially, you know, if, you know, they watch police interceptors as young kids or teenagers and they've got their heart set on becoming police officers, and then they join the police force and it's like, ooh, no, what you see on TV is the best bits. Your day-to-day routine is nothing like that. It must be soul destroying.
Yeah.
But it's almost time to wrap up, mate. But there's one thing that I'm finishing my podcast with, and I'm going to ask every guest, because I think the answer is going to be so unique and diverse that it will be interesting. So, what did serving in the Corps mean to you?
Yeah, that is a good question. What did it mean to me? Well, as a kid growing up, like I said, I wanted to join the Corps. I've got bad eyesight, terrible eyesight, actually. So bad, I would say if I don't have my contact lens in, I need a stick. And I cheated on my test to get in because it was back in the day when they had like the alphabet on the wall.
Yeah.
And I went in there and I memorized it. And then they asked me to take my contact lens out. And if I take my contact lens out, I can't even see the A. So I cheated my way through it. And when I was going through training, I had conjunctivitis and I had to go sick bay. And I was like, they're going to test my eyes again and they're going to find out and they're going to throw me out. Luckily, I had the respirator with the lenses in the respirator. So I just wore that on like Navexes and stuff like that so I could see. So I should never been in the military because my eyes were bad. I'm glad I got away with it because it's made me who I am. But what I loved about the Corps is the sense of brotherhood, especially the Royal Marines, is that you go through hard training. I got back trooped. I went to Hunter Troop as well. I wouldn't say I was the best recruit. And I went back and instructed recruits, and I told them that I go, the amount of people I've seen who've been back troop and going, I'm opting out, I'm leaving. You go back 2 weeks, 4 weeks. Who cares in the career? Just pick yourself up as that failing point and go again. So I wouldn't say I was the best recruit, but I enjoyed my time in training. I enjoyed my time in command units because you're working with your friends. Like I say to my son who's 15, I go, join the Marines, even if you do it for 4 years, because you work with your best mates. You travel the world. You do something that you feel you're passionate about, you're proud of, you're proud to serve your country, you're proud to be with your friends. I think it's a great opportunity for anyone to join in the military. And I wouldn't take back anything from my time in the military. I loved it. And even like leaving was the hardest day ever because I chose to leave. But yeah, it's a great career for anyone. And it just gives you that sense of elevation that you feel I've done something that's tough, that nothing I'm going to do in the future is going to be that hard. Even now, I've put on a lot of weight and it comes to running. And I think to myself, I've run 30 miles before with kit, boots, and everything. I can smash out a 4 miler now. I might be hanging out, but I can do it because I've done something tougher than this before. And I think that mindset, it puts you in a mindset, being a Royal Marine, that you've always been colder, wetter, and hungrier than what you are now. And even like when I'm in war zones, I sit there and I think, fuck, I used to do this and be surrounded by my mates who I knew if the shit hit the fan, they would look after me. And now I'm doing this on my own with no weapons. That shit is the fan. I'm fucked. But you remember them times, and I go back to it and go, what do we do in Afghanistan? What do we do in Iraq? What do we do in training exercises? How do we do it? And you just relate back to it. But the best time I had in the Corps, other than being in operations, was when I was training recruits, taking recruits through Lympstone, sharing your knowledge with other people, the young generation, and beasting them. I love beasting them. But the reason I'd beast them would be like, I'm beasting you because this is why. You haven't ate your breakfast this morning, so you couldn't keep up in that yomp or that 4-mile speed march. Now a helicopter has to come to pick you up as a casualty, or someone needs to risk their life to come and now engage with you because you haven't done what you need to do. And we're giving you the lessons to teach you from our mistakes on how not to make mistakes. So I found that very rewarding, taking recruits through. And for anyone who is in the military that hasn't done it yet, I'd recommend definitely taking at least 1 or 2 troops through. Don't stay there forever, but just do 1 or 2, give back to what you were given.
And without sounding big-headed, put your stamp on the future of the Corps as well. I mean, it's probably one of I'm a colour sergeant now, so chances are I'm not going to go back and instruct recruits. I didn't do it as a corporal or sergeant, but it's probably going to be one of my few regrets in my career is that I didn't go back and take recruits through, because I think having the ability to turn around and go, I passed those lads out of training, is a 100%. Huge sense of achievement and pride.
And to be honest with you, because like I said, I was back troop twice. My training team, when I went through training, when I saw them in units, I didn't even want to speak to them because I didn't like them. They were very much that era of guys who didn't do much because they're the Northern Ireland generation. And it was more about just thrashing you for the sake of thrashing you. I didn't feel like it was constructive from what they'd done. I didn't learn from, of course I learned, but I didn't feel that I learned too much from them. So I'd be like, I've seen them in units, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. And I know I worked with a couple of them since when after I passed out. But then recruits I took through it, I'm not going to say every recruit loved me, but I got inspirational corporal twice. And I was hard on the recruits, but I was hard but fair with them. I'll tell them stories. I'll tell them why things are happening. This is how to do this. This is a trick on an easy way. Or even it would be something like one recruit. And I used to get pissed off. I know I'm waffling now, but I used to get pissed off with troops phone you up and go, we're back trooping this kid to you. I go, why? He's map reading shit. I was like, teach him then. Spend the evening teaching him. Yeah, call him in the office. They backtroop one guy to me. I go, why? He's map reading. I don't get it. I was like, when I'm duty corporal, you come into the office, you sit there, and we'll do one-on-one map reading with you in your time and my time to get you up to speed. And I think that's what it is investment in people. It's about people that you want. That it's quite easy to get rid of them. Go, they're shit. Gone. Next. Do you mean I only want to work with good people? But I think very much when it comes to instructing, it comes to leading and management, you've got to invest time in people, and because that comes back round for you. And a lot of the recruits I took through training, they still message me once in a while, like on Instagram. I see them out. I live in Exmouth now when I'm not away traveling. I see them about. Do you mean shake their hand, like chat to them and everything, have a drink with them? And I think that's what it is. Some of the guys I took through training in 2007 after I come back from Afghanistan to 2008. Some of them are colour stripers and sergeant majors now. Yeah. They are the future of the Corps. They are, do you mean? They are leading men now. And I think it's that initial stamp of getting them up to that standard of just a training standard that they're going to go off into the units. And that's where you learn your trade. I didn't learn how to be a commando until I went to the commando units. That's where you learn your job. Yeah. You didn't learn it in a training environment. You only learn the basics. So I think, in not just a core, I think in all jobs, it comes to management and it comes to investment in people, because that's how you get the best out of people. And I'm not saying I'm the greatest at doing that all the time, so I can be very firm and very direct and blunt, but it is about nurturing and learning.
One of the first ever examples of what you said there was probably week 1, day 2. So Troop PTI comes in, does the whole, right, man, you work for me, I'll work for you,
Yeah, that classic.
and I'll square you away. And, because we're young and dumb and wet behind the ears, not that we wouldn't otherwise, but we dug out blind. And that night, probably about 7:30, 8 o'clock, so we're sitting doing admin, and he comes in, and he's like, right, man, I fucking told you, and he said it dead serious, I fucking told you, you work for me, I'll work for you. So gather round. And he goes, right, tomorrow in the gym, this is what we're doing. And anyone who's went through Romy's training will know front placing sideways and heel raise. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he showed the routine of what it was. But that was the first instance where I was like, because I grew up without a father, so I didn't have that, right, son, if I say something, I mean it and I'm going to do it. So for this guy to come in and go, right, you do something for me, I'm going to do it for you. I'm a bit sketchy going, yeah, is it really though? And when he did, I'm like, fucking hell, yeah. Somebody actually keeps their word. That was Sam Sheriff, by the way. Reorg. Sam was our Troop PTI. But yeah, the core is a wonderful place. And it is. I have so many good friends that even now, years can pass and I'll get a message. All right, Royal, how you doing? I'm like, fucking hell. It's been 10 years since I've seen him. But the conversation just continues as though I haven't seen him in
totally.
2 minutes.
And then that's the thing is, not long ago, I saw a mate who I haven't seen for 18 years. I hadn't seen him, and you meet up again, it's just back to normal, just chatting. Yeah. I think very much, and I think that's where military people struggle with civilian relationships, especially with women and stuff, when they get a bit over the top about something. And you're like, what are you on about? Oh, you haven't messaged me, or you don't want to do this, or you don't want to go to that wedding, or and it's like, chill out. Do you mean? I think it's very much is because we're used to people coming and going in your lives all the time that you don't need to keep in contact with them religiously. So like, if people say like, how many friends have you got? I'm like, sometimes I struggle to think, like, how many real friends have I actually got? You think, because then you're thinking now, I'm thinking of people that I talk to on a daily basis. But really, it comes down to like, how many friends? I've got loads of friends. It's just, I don't talk to them all the time. They're out there. Do you mean? And when I see them again, we're best mates again. And I think very much that is a military mindset of people come and go, but you don't forget about them. It's like a lot of civilians go, well, they haven't phoned me for 2 years, so we're no longer friends. It's not the case. It's just like, he's busy. He's doing what he's doing. I'm off doing what I want to do. Do you mean? If I want, I even messaged one of my mates today saying I'm back in Exmouth at the moment. Do you want to meet up? And he's like, next week. And I haven't seen him for 2 years now. So he's still in the Corps. So yeah, very much. I think relationships are on the back burner when it comes to us, but they're always there because you meet so many great people.
That's it. Yeah. Happy days. Well, thanks very much for coming on, mate. I really appreciate it. And
no worries.
And all the best for
good luck with it.
For breaking into Hollywood, mate.
Thank you for listening to the Stand Easy podcast with your host, Crash Stevenson. Join in the discussion over on the Facebook page at fb.me/Stand Easy Podcast.